The 365 Pro Wrestling Podcast. Welcome everybody to the 365 Pro Wrestling Podcast. This weekend we ignited in a winter storm. Campbell River and Comox were under weather and wind effect, and unfortunately we had none of our mainlanders able to get over because of ferry cancellations. One man who did make it over was TJ Harley, and Miss Mandy Monroe got to sit down with him after the event. The audio is a little bit scratchy, we apologize for that, but it's a great taste of TJ for this one. We'll have many parts to this TJ series, and we hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Miss Mandy, here with TJ Harley. TJ, you're fresh off a controversial win from Revlon Splasher. What do you want to say about that?
I'm happy to be here. Ray is a solid professional and super fun to work with, and it was a lot of fun. The people seemed to enjoy it, and we had a lot of fun in there as well. And definitely something I didn't expect coming here today, but it was a nice surprise.
That's awesome. It definitely looked like it was a shock in the ring. One thing I did want to talk to you about, you said that was one of your first mixed gender matches. You've actually done a lot of work in the wrestling scene. You've worked in multiple places, multiple promotions. You also had a huge Ontario career. When did you start that? In the 1990s?
Dating me there, goodness gracious. Yes, I believe it was 1999. I had my first match in May of 99 against a guy named Marco Malachias. It was a fantastic Ontario worker from back in the day. Learned a lot in my time there. It was a good place to get my feet wet in the business for sure. Ontario is still to this day a fantastic hotbed of talent, and it wasn't much different then as it is now, and it shows with a lot of the very skilled professionals that have come out of Ontario indie scene in the last 10 years for sure. So I was happy to be there at the right time and work with the right people that I feel like complemented what I was trying to do at my level of skill as well, and it helped me grow as a talent. And I hope I helped other people grow as talents as well. Actually, it wasn't my first intergender match. I had plenty of in tag team matches, but it was my first singles match where my only opponent was a female. It was different for me. I was trying to. When I'm going out there, I always want to put a little bit of a lesson in the way I work. That I'm kind of telling a story, but at the same time, it's important. I find it like it's important to have wholesome storylines and give a good point to the whole idea and what you're working towards. And so my goal this evening was to not strike at all, and I didn't work. I ended up falling back on my reactions, and that's what we do in pro wrestling. You go back to your training and to what you find simple. And unfortunately, I took a bit of a sneaky side maneuver and threw a couple in there. But I'm glad to challenge myself and to work in that way. And Ray's a super solid pro that worked a ton all over BC and in the United States, and being able to get into the ring with somebody like that is special at any point. So I was pretty happy to be a part of it and to be here. It wasn't who I was expecting to work with this evening, but you know what? It was kind of almost weird. I had stepped out of the building for a minute, and I was thinking to myself, like based on who was coming and who was here tonight, that I was thinking to myself, it would actually be awesome to work Ray. And I started thinking about different things I could do with her, and then I walked into the area where the ring's being set up, and Mike came up to me and he's like, "Hey, you okay with working Ray tonight?" I was like, it's so weird how that happens. It's funny you could just say it and everyone will be like, "Oh, okay," but like when you actually experience something like that, it's like, wow, it was like almost like a deja vu moment.
You're very strange in the moment, for sure, I bet. Going back to your beginning of your career, you started out in Ontario. Was that where you were originally from, or did you move out there?
Yes, so I was lucky enough to grow up in a beautiful small town called Florence, Ontario, which had about 400 people in it, very small community, and I saw some young guys my age bouncing on a trampoline, and I was like, I don't have any friends, and I just moved to this town, what's up? And they're like, do you like pro wrestling? And I was like, I love pro wrestling. Now, it was kind of a fib. I actually wasn't allowed to watch pro wrestling. When I was about 8 years old, I did a DDT to a friend of mine on some concrete. He sold it like a pro, put me over like a champ, went home crying, and then I wasn't actually allowed to go to WrestleMania 3 where Hulk Hogan slammed the Giant. I wasn't allowed to go. My brother got to go. And I wasn't allowed to, I was grounded from pro wrestling forever. I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling again. And see what happens? Parents remember this. You tell your children not to do something and they end up doing it. So now I've been working for I think almost 20 years now, which makes me feel really old. But Ontario was a great place to learn. I learned from I was at the ICW School of Wrestling, which is I don't remember what ICW even stood for, but anyway, a lot of guys know Joe Frockledge, Ike the Crippler Shaw, and the epic stories that come out of that wrestling school, and I was there for many of them and can verify many of them. But also I was there at the right time with a gentleman named Carl LeDuc, who is a very skilled professional from a fantastic wrestling family. He's had his issues throughout his life, but I got him at a good point in his life where he was feeling good and his wrestling was at its top, I feel like, and he definitely gave me the tools to make me what I am as far as pro wrestling today. He was one of the main people in that, but then my friends on the trampoline, funny story about him, ended up being WWE superstar Eric Young. So we became friends and started jumping on the trampoline, doing moves to each other, started putting on shows. Eventually we welded poles on that trampoline, stuck some beams underneath of it and some plywood and carpet, and we put on wrestling shows at our local Optimus Hall. We would draw 100 people, 200 people, and then we figured out how to get our own cable television show on Shaw Cable. And we produced our own. We were 17 years old. Jared, I think, had just turned 18, Eric Young. And we put on a show at our local community hall. We drew 400 people. We had a scaffold match, which was the big payoff at the end. I jumped off the scaffold and I was afraid of heights and still aren't a big fan of heights, so that was a big deal for me at the time. It's actually online. It was called FWF, Florence Wrestling Federation. So if you look up FWF Shaw Cable, you'll probably find that show. Eric Young is known as, I believe he's Eric Young on the show. I'm not mistaken. He might know. You know what? His name was Silver Fox at the time, and my name was Renton Cross. And but funny enough, TJ Harley, the character I play and have worked on different levels of a TJ Harley character, was actually one of the. We had different characters, and what I guess now known as backyard wrestling. And TJ Harley was one of the characters. He was a guy who picked his nose and he wore like old shitty clothes. I guess he's pretty close to me now. I was in the Sleaze Patrol with my buddy Romeo Adams, who ended up being a great professional as well. He ended up training with his brother, who's Kamikaze now, who was Suicide Sean Ball when we were learning and coming up in Ontario Indies. So yeah, there's tons of guys who ended up being connected with, even at a young age, that ended up being pros. I think 5 of us out of my high school class became like professional wrestlers on the indie scene, which is kind of cool.
That's really crazy, especially like from such a small area, like you were saying. So it really sounds like you got into it all at a really opportune moment. Was there any sort of advice you would give to someone trying to start training now or break in at this time?
Do your research and find the right school. There's lots of people who advertise and tell people that they're the greatest and they've done all this stuff. Take your time. Don't just go to the first place and just that'll accept you. Seek out the most skilled performers that you can find in your area and try to just hang out with them and be around them and see what they do, watch what they do, watch how they talk, learn from them. And if you can get under the tutelage of the right people, then you can definitely find your way. Eddie's got a great school here in Campbell River. He's got a great setup and a lot of good people involved. and the shows that they put on are always a lot of fun, and it's always a pleasure to work with them. So I think, if you're on the island, he would be the guy to talk to, but beyond that, do your research and find the right people.
We're going to end this one right there. We have plenty more TJ Harley and Miss Mandy interview, and we'll get that to you throughout the week. But right now, we're just going to say goodbye. Thank you very much. Look forward to tomorrow's episode. We're going to talk about the events, the winter weather, and how it affected the event, and so much more. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you tomorrow.